paddies in Quanglam province had fed 11 villages for 3 generations. 140,000 hectares, hand-planted, rain-watered, yielding 2 harvests a year at 4.6 tons per hectare. The blight appeared in the 3rd week of the growing season. It took the eastern provinces first. The stalks curled inward at the 3rd leaf and blackened from the root, and in 40 days it had crossed 11 provinces and 900 kilometers of cultivated land. The Hegemony Agricultural Bureau classified it as a natural fungal mutation, unavoidable, tragic. And then a consortium subsidiary arrived with the only compound that slowed it. The compound was called Veritrol 7. It did not cure the blight. It slowed it enough that a treated field might yield 40% of its normal harvest. Enough to survive on, not enough to sell. The first shipment was free. The second cost 9 credits per hectare. By the 4th month, it cost 27, and the colony's agricultural exports had dropped to 0. 3.2 million people who had fed themselves now lined up at consortium windows and paid for the right to grow enough rice to eat. The consortium filed the arrangement under agricultural emergency relief. The gross margin on Veritrol 7 was 84%. Dr. Lin Pham was 61 years old. She had practiced medicine in Quanglam province for 34 years, and before that she had studied epidemiology at the Hanoi Institute of Tropical Medicine, where the first year of the program was not medicine at all. It was pattern recognition. How to look at a village and read it the way a tracker reads a forest floor. She had spent 3 decades tracing fevers to their wells, parasites to their vectors, outbreaks to the single meal or the single handshake where the chain began. She was not an agricultural scientist. She was something more dangerous. She was a woman trained to follow a disease backward to its source. And she had been watching the blight with the wrong feeling in her stomach for 4 months. The wrong feeling was this: the blight was too clean. Natural pathogens are sloppy. They overshoot, understrike, skip a row, double back. They leave ragged edges because biology is not neat. Dr. Lin pulled a blackened stalk from her own paddy on the morning of the 119th day and held it up to the light. And what she saw was a spiral. The necrosis wound around the stalk in a left-handed helix, 3.2 centimeters per rotation, uniform from the 3rd leaf to the root tip. Every stalk, every field, every province. She had seen a spiral like that once. In a journal article from the Terran Xenobiological Archive, in a photograph captioned, Agent VX7 Trial, Controlled Release, Biomass Decay Pattern. She walked back to her clinic. She opened a drawer she had not opened in 11 years. She pulled out a field sampling kit, Hanoi Institute stamp still on the case, and she began the work she had been trained for in a country where the first lesson of medicine was that disease does not arrive by accident. She worked alone for the first 3 weeks. Sample collection, culture growth, chromatographic separation with equipment that would have embarrassed a second-year student. She did not need better equipment. She needed the question nobody else was asking.
Where did it start? Not where did we notice it? Where did it start?
The Agricultural Bureau had mapped the blight's spread from its most visible outbreak, the eastern lowlands, outward. standard procedure. Dr. Lin mapped it from every reported case inward, toward its origin, the way she would trace a fever. Not where the patient collapsed, but where the patient drank. Every line converged on a single agricultural station 47 kilometers northwest of Dalat. Unmanned, Consortium leased, filed as a soil monitoring outpost. She requested the station's utility records from the provincial land office. A clerk named Trang processed the request in 4 minutes. Nobody had told the clerk the records mattered. Nobody had told the clerk anything. The electrical draw for a soil monitoring outpost with no occupants was 7 times what its listed equipment required. Dr. Lin circled the number and wrote nothing else on the page. She did not requisition transport. She did not file a travel notice. She packed her sampling kit, 2 liters of water, a rice ball wrapped in banana leaf, and a notebook. And she walked. 47 kilometers. 2 days because she stopped at 3 villages on the way and asked the same question at each. When did you first see the blight? Not the month, the week, the day. If they remembered. They remembered. A farmer remembers the day his crop begins to die the way a parent remembers a fever. The first village reported the blight 9 days before the eastern lowlands. The second, 14. The third, 21. Each one was closer to the Consortium station by exactly 12 kilometers. The blight had not spread from east to west. It had spread outward from a single point, in a perfect radial pattern, at 700 meters per day. Natural pathogens do not spread in perfect radial patterns. Wind scatters them. Runoff carries them downhill. They follow roads, rivers, root systems. They are messy because the world is messy. 700 meters per day in every direction is not a disease. It is a dispersal schedule. Under the floor, she found a dispersal unit, military grade. Its reservoir was empty but not clean. Residue coated the interior in a film that, under her 30-year-old chromatograph, separated into the exact molecular components of the blight pathogen, and stamped on the reservoir housing, in characters small enough to require a magnifying glass, was a batch number. Batch number VT74419, registered to Consortium Biosolutions, a subsidiary of the same entity that manufactured Veritrol 7. The disease and the cure shared a manufacturer, a filing system, and a shipping lane. The gross margin was not 84%. The gross margin was the entire colony.
Pathogen, VX7 derivative. Vector, aerosolized dispersal, subsurface ventilation. Release site, Consortium leased station, coordinates 11.94 north, 108.44 east. Batch number matches Veritrol 7 synthesis pathway. The compound does not treat the blight. It regulates it.
The consortium sent a representative. His name was Sareth Val, and he arrived in a vehicle that cost more than the clinic's annual budget. And he sat in the chair where patients sat. And he offered her a position.
Your work on local pathogen tracking is exactly the kind of community expertise we value. The Consortium Agricultural Health Initiative has a research fellowship, 6 years, full laboratory access, funded.
What is the sample submission policy?
All research materials remain consortium property for the duration of the fellowship. Standard practice protects the integrity of the data.
So my samples would become yours.
They will be properly archived and accessible to you at all times.
She poured his tea. He did not drink it. She did not expect him to.
The blight spirals left-handed, 3.2 centimeters per rotation. Natural fungi do not spiral.
He left 11 minutes after he arrived. His vehicle was still running when he came out. She did not go to the colonial governor. She did not petition the hegemony court. She did not contact the press or the military or the advocacy networks. She was not interested in a hearing. She sat down at her terminal at 9 in the evening and she began to write a paper. Methodology, sample collection dates and locations, chromatographic results, the molecular signature of VX7 and its precise correspondence to Veritrol 7's active compound, the batch number, the coordinates of the dispersal station, the consortium's own shipping manifests, which she had requested through the Colonial Agricultural Records Office 6 weeks earlier, and which a clerk had sent her because nobody had told the clerk not to. She published it to the Open Xenobiological Archive at 3 in the morning. No paywall, no embargo, no institutional affiliation, just her name, her clinic address, and 41 pages of evidence that could be reproduced by anyone with a chromatograph and a rice stalk. She had considered sending it to the Hegemony Agricultural Bureau. She had considered sending it to the colonial governor or to the 9 advocacy networks that had been filing formal protests about the compound's pricing. She sent it to none of them. She sent it to everyone. An open archive cannot be embargoed. It cannot be classified. It cannot be bought and shelved. It sits there and anyone who wants to read it, reads it. By dawn, it had been downloaded 900 times. By noon, 4 independent laboratories on 3 different worlds had confirmed her spectral analysis using their own local samples. The blight spiraled on Quang Lam, and it spiraled on every colony that had reported similar crop failures in the past 5 years. 11 worlds. The same spiral, the same 3.2 centimeters. By the end of the second day, the Hegemony Quarantine Authority had opened a file. By the end of the 5th, the file had become an investigation. By the end of the 11th, the investigation had become a containment order. The quarantine was not a punishment. It was a medical response. Dr. Lin's paper demonstrated that Consortium Biosolutions had deployed a controlled pathogen on a populated agricultural world, which under Hegemony Biological Weapons Protocol 6 required immediate containment of the manufacturer's entire distribution network until decontamination could be verified. 41 consortium worlds were quarantined in 11 hours. Supply lines severed. Export licenses frozen. The consortium's agricultural products, the ones that were not weapons, could not leave their own systems. The consortium filed 912 objections in the first week. Each one required a tribunal hearing. Each tribunal requested Dr. Lin's paper as the primary exhibit. Each hearing confirmed what the paper said. The disease and the cure were the same product, sold twice.
The Quang Lam pathogen was a naturally occurring mutation that our research division happened to identify before public health authorities. Our compound was developed in direct response to the outbreak. Any structural similarity between the pathogen and our product is coincidental.
3.2 centimeters per rotation. Every stalk. Every field. Coincidence does not spiral. The quarantine held for 14 months. During that time, the consortium's agricultural exports dropped to zero. Their dependent client worlds, the ones that had been supplied with consortium-exclusive seed stock, began to starve. The consortium requested humanitarian exemptions. Each request was reviewed against Dr. Lin's paper. 4 subsidiary boards dissolved. 11 executives were indicted under the Biological Weapons Protocol. The consortium's market capitalization fell by 68%. Their stock in agricultural bioengineering, their entire portfolio, became untradeable. No species would buy seed from a company that had weaponized seed. The dependent client worlds were the ones that suffered most. They had been buying consortium-exclusive seed stock for decades, engineered to be incompatible with any competitor's fertilizer. When the quarantine cut their supply lines, they had nothing to plant. 31 worlds petitioned for emergency seed from the Hegemony Reserve. The petition cited Dr. Lin's paper as the cause of their distress. They did not cite the consortium's decades of engineered dependency because that part had been voluntary. The total cost to the consortium in the final Hegemony audit was listed at 412 billion credits. The cost of the blight program itself, from development to deployment to the manufacture of Veritrol 7, was 30 million. The gross margin they had projected over 10 years of managed dependency was 900 billion. The total cost of Dr. Lin's investigation, including the 2-day walk to the dispersal station, the clerk's 4-minute records request, and the 34 years of field practice that taught her where to look, was 600 credits. The blight had a half-life without Veritrol 7 to regulate it, 89 days. Left untreated, it burned through and died, and the soil recovered. The consortium had not made an incurable disease. They had made a manageable one, because a disease that kills everything kills the market. The paddies came back. Not all of them, not all at once. But by the second planting season, Quang Lam province was producing 3.1 tons per hectare, and the distribution centers were empty, and nobody was lining up. Dr. Lin went back to her clinic. She did not give interviews. She did not attend the tribunals. She did not accept the 3 honorary positions offered by institutions that had not answered her requests for laboratory access when she needed it.
When did the cough start?
She was not interested in what happened to the consortium. She had published. The arm had read it. What they did with it was their business. She had patience to see. The Hegemony Biological Weapons Tribunal closed its file on the Quang Lam incident with a single paragraph. It read, in part, the consortium deployed a modified pathogen across 900 kilometers of cultivated land, affecting 3.2 million people over a period of 119 days, at a total program cost of approximately 30 million credits. The pathogen was identified, its source located, its manufacturer named, and its distribution network dismantled by one physician working alone with a 30-year-old field kit in a clinic with no laboratory in 38 days at a personal cost of 600 credits. The tribunal offered no further comment. None was needed. The numbers said what the tribunal would not. There is something the galaxy has not yet learned about the species that came out of Terra. They write things down. They trace things back. And when the trail ends at a door, they publish the address. The Consortium's shipping lanes ran through a region of space that 9 species had been avoiding for decades. A gravitational anomaly, uncharted, sitting in the dark. With the lanes closed, the anomaly sat undisturbed for 4 months. Then a human survey crew, between contracts, looked at the charts and said, "That one. Let us go look at that one." They packed sandwiches,